So what if you could treat something as complex as fibromyalgia, not with a pill, but by, well, tapping directly into the body's own electrical wiring? That's exactly what we're digging into today, based on a really groundbreaking new review. All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we've got to understand just how tricky fibromyalgia is. Then we'll get into this wild new idea, hacking the body's superhighway. We'll look at the science, check out what the first studies are telling us, and then wrap up with what this could mean for the future. Sound good? Let's go. Okay, so before we jump into the really cool tech stuff, we have to get a handle on the problem itself. Because, to really get why this new approach is so exciting, you first have to understand just how complex and, frankly, overwhelming fibromyalgia can be. And right off the bat, this is not some rare, obscure condition. We're talking about 2 to 4% of the entire global population. To put that in perspective, that's potentially 1 in 25 people. So yeah, you almost definitely know someone who's dealing with this. It's a huge issue, not just for the people living with it, but for healthcare systems all over the world. And listen, it is so much more than just pain. I mean, imagine this: constant, widespread aching and a deep, crushing fatigue that just never lets up. You wake up in the morning feeling just as tired as when you went to bed. And on top of all that, you've got this cognitive haze, what people call fibrofog, that makes even simple thinking feel like wading through mud. It literally touches every single part of a person's life. And wow, the economic hit is just staggering. Look at this number from a Danish study, over 27,000 euros. That's the excess cost per patient per year. And that's not just some abstract number on a spreadsheet, right? That's real life. That's careers being put on hold, medical bills piling up. It's a massive financial and emotional weight on people and their families. And this right here is really the heart of the problem. The treatments we have now, they're often just not enough. It's kind of like they're a shot in the dark. They might help a little, but they often come with a whole list of side effects. And that's exactly why scientists are starting to look in a totally different direction, way beyond the typical pill bottle. Okay, so this is where things get really interesting. We're moving into a totally different way of thinking. Instead of just trying to put a Band-Aid on the symptoms, what if we could get right to the source? What if we could actually hack into the body's main communication network, its own electrical superhighway? And that leads us to this huge question. It's the whole idea behind this new line of research. Could we treat fibromyalgia not with a chemical, not with a pill, but with an electrical signal? A signal designed to help the nervous system kind of reset itself and find its balance again. And that's where this thing called vagus nerve stimulation, or VNS, comes into play. Now, originally, this was pretty intense. You can see on the left it involved a surgically implanted device. But, and this is the real game changer, now there are non-invasive options, like the one on the right, that just clips onto your ear. No surgery needed. That's a huge leap forward. All right, so I know what you're thinking. How on earth can stimulating just one nerve possibly help with a condition that affects the entire body? Well, the answer is pretty cool. It all comes down to seeing the body in a new light, not as a bunch of separate organs, but as one big interconnected network. This whole idea is called network physiology, and what it does is it completely reframes the problem. It says, hey, maybe fibromyalgia isn't a muscle problem or even just a brain problem. Maybe it's a communication problem, like the phone lines are down between the nervous system, the immune system, and all the other major players. They're just not talking to each other correctly. And this diagram, it shows us exactly how this works. Just follow the path. The signal starts at the VNS device, travels up that vagus nerve, and then, look at that, it branches out everywhere. It's like a master controller. It can tweak how the brain perceives stress, it can regulate the gut and heart, and it can even dial down inflammation. By influencing this whole network, you can start to tackle those core symptoms we talked about: the pain, the fatigue, the brain fog. Yeah, and one of its most powerful tricks is something called the inflammatory reflex. Think of it as the body's own built-in anti-inflammatory system. What VNS can do is basically flip the switch on that system. It's like having a dimmer switch for chronic inflammation, which, as it turns out, seems to be a major part of what's going on in fibromyalgia. So the theory behind it is fascinating, right? Flipping this inflammation switch. It just makes so much sense on paper. But at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is, does it actually work for real people? Okay, let's take a look at what the early clinical trials are showing us. So, this big review pulled together 4 key studies. And you can see they looked at both the older implants and the newer clip-on devices. Now, full disclosure, these are all small, early-stage studies. But just look at the pattern here. We're seeing improvements in pain and function. We're seeing it work even better when you add exercise. We're seeing better sleep. The signal across the board is pointing in a really positive direction. And this quote from the review really nails it. Okay, it sounds a little academic. Modulating vagal activity may attenuate core FMS symptoms. But in plain English, what they're saying is, look, it's early days and the studies are small, but they're all telling us the same story. Stimulating this nerve seems to genuinely help dial down the core symptoms of fibromyalgia. And you know what I really love? This slide right here. The researchers are being totally upfront about the limitations. This chart is a risk of bias assessment. And yeah, you see some red and yellow flags, but that's not a bad thing. That's what good science looks like. It means they're being honest, saying, hey, the early signs are really promising, but we need more and better research to be absolutely sure. Okay, so we've got this promising, but still very early evidence. That brings us to the big and I think most exciting part of this whole story. What does this all mean for the future? Is this where we're headed for treating not just fibromyalgia, but other chronic pain conditions too? What we're looking at here is a massive shift in how we think about treatment. I mean, on the one hand, you have the old way, drugs that try to suppress symptoms and often cause side effects all over the body. But on the other hand, you have this new idea of bioelectronic medicine. Instead of a chemical, you're using a targeted electrical signal to help the body's own circuits work better. And the potential for personalizing that, I mean, imagine being able to fine-tune the signal for each person instead of just upping the dose of a pill. It's a whole new ballgame. Now, obviously, we're not there just yet. There's still a road ahead to make this a standard treatment. The next steps are pretty clear. We need those big, long-term clinical trials. We need everyone to agree on the best way to actually do this stimulation. And ideally, we need ways to figure out ahead of time who is most likely to benefit. The dream, really, is to have a treatment that fits seamlessly into someone's life at home. So, we'll leave you with this one last thought to chew on. For the last 100 years or so, medicine has been all about treating the body's chemistry with, well, more chemistry, pills. But what if the next great frontier isn't about chemistry at all? What if it's about learning to speak the body's other language, the language of electricity? Maybe hacking our own nervous system is the key to finally restoring the balance that our bodies are meant to have.